What's going on, my fellow rock and rollers? Don't forget to hit the bell notification icon to be notified every time I put out a new video on my channel. This was a fan request, and it's a pretty interesting and tragic story. Badlands would be an 80s era hair metal band that, in a lot of respects, was a supergroup, but egos, record label politics, and death would ultimately tear the band apart. And it seemed like every member of Badlands shared some sort of history with Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne, and it would begin with guitarist Jake E. Lee, who would play with Ozzy Osbourne from 1982 to 1987. Lee would replace Randy Rhoads, but would eventually be fired from Ozzy's band for not getting along with the Prince of Darkness and other members of the band on a personal level. And following his exit from Ozzy's band, he would hook up with former Black Sabbath vocalist Ray Gillan, and Gillen had a pretty brief tenure with Black Sabbath in the mid-80s and even recorded an album with the group, but his vocals would be erased and replaced with another singer. Lee would end up recruiting bassist Greg Chason, who had unsuccessfully auditioned for Ozzy's band a few years prior. Following his unsuccessful audition, Lee and Chason would remain in touch in the subsequent years. The last piece of the puzzle would be drummer Eric Singer, who played with Lita Ford and, you guessed it, Black Sabbath. While the band on the surface appeared to be just another hair band from the glam era, they went for more of a bluesy and gritty sound that harkened back to their heroes, which included Led Zeppelin and Humble Pie. The group's debut album is held in high regard, and they received a fair bit of press coverage and got a good amount of airplay, both on radio and on MTV. But commercially, their albums underperformed in the eyes of their label. The band would release their self-titled debut record in 1989, and it would make Rolling Stone's list of 50 greatest hair metal albums. The album sold around 400,000 copies, peaking at number 57 on the Billboard Albums charts, and the album would also see the release of several high-profile singles, including Dreams in the Dark and Winter's Call. The band's follow-up record, Voodoo's Highway, is where things fell apart for the group. Prior to recording the second record, drummer Eric Singer left the group and was replaced with Jeff Martin. Vocalist Ray Gillan and guitarist Jake E. Lee started to disagree over the sound of the band, and as the internal band relationships deteriorated, there were problems with the record label as well. It would come out years later that guitarist Jake E. Lee had his own theory about what was going on with singer Ray Gillan in his personal life. In a 2019 Let There Be Talk podcast interview, he would reveal that Gillan was apparently diagnosed with HIV, which something at that point in time was connected with intravenous drug users or gay men. Lee would reveal that around the time Badlands formed, the pair discussed drug use, and Gillan revealed that he had once tried heroin with his uncle, who was gay and HIV positive. Lee would reveal that Gillan never shared his diagnosis with him, and claimed in between the first and second record, Gillan was starting to look very thin. It didn't look quite as healthy. Further complicating matters was that the band's manager, who also produced the vocals on the first record, was a fellow named Paul O'Neill. O'Neill was accused of stealing money from the band, and they subsequently fired him. The problem was, he would turn around and tell their label, Atlantic Records, about Gillan's health diagnosis, and the label pulled touring support for the group's second record. Making things worse was that Lee would talk to Kerrang! Magazine in 1991 and revealed that Gillan had been fired after claiming the singer went behind the backs of his bandmates and told the record label that he had written a handful of potential hit songs, but his bandmates wouldn't record them. Gillan would respond to Lee's accusations in Kerrang!, claiming he wasn't happy with the quality of the material on the band's second album and wanted to keep writing to write more commercial songs, but the band disagreed. The bandmates traded barbs in the press, but the band had already booked a UK tour. The tour was almost cancelled when Gillan wanted to quit the band, but the promoter convinced him to fly overseas to play the gigs. During the tour, that's when things became even more contentious. During a show at the London Astoria on July 2nd, 1992, a few songs into the set, Gillan pulled out a copy of Kerrang! Magazine that featured Lee's interview and told the crowd, "There's two sides to every story," while Lee stood in shock and mouthed the words, "It's all true." What's funny is that the reviews of the band's last shows with Gillan were praised by the press, and following the tour, it was reported that Gillan was fired. Lee would reveal in the press that he had hired vocalist John West to record the group's third record. The band did in fact write some songs, but it was around this time the band was let go from the recording contract with Atlantic Records, who wasn't interested in the new material. The recordings would be subsequently shelved, and it was around this time that alternative rock was now popular, and any bands associated or appearing to be from the hair metal scene suffered commercially. Following his departure, singer Ray Gillan would appear on Lynch Mob's record Sacred Groove, and would form the band Sun Red Sun with guitarist Al Romano, as well as former Alice in Chains bassist Mike Starr, and drummer Bobby Rondinelli, who used to play in, you guessed it, Black Sabbath. Shortly after forming the band, Gillen would pass away on December 1st, 1993, due to complications from AIDS. In a strange turn of events, Gillen's replacement in Badlands, John West, would also replace him in Sun Red Sun, and he would tour with George Lynch as well. Badlands, for their part, would see their third album titled Dusk eventually be released through Japanese label Pony Canyon in 1998. And since Badlands has dissolved, the various members have went on to pursue other musical projects. That concludes today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And if you guys have suggestions for future topics, let me know in the comment section below. And if you guys want to support my channel, simply watch another video or go check us out on Patreon starting as low as $2 a month. Take care.